Hi there, my name is Julian Bollider. I'm the co-director of the Australian Urban Design Research Centre, a research centre of the University of Western Australia. Tonight I will announce the prize winners of the Business as Unusual Ideas competition, which we ran, which invited entrants to imagine a future Australian city that embodies an Australian dream for the 21st century. I'd like to acknowledge the Planning Institute of Australia and the School of Design at the University of Western Australia for supporting the competition and providing the prize money, and for my colleagues, Dr. Robert Cameron, who's effectively director of the schools competition, and Dr. Paula Hooper, my co-director of the centre. I would also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where the competition entrants cited their proposals and pay respects to their elders, past and present. So why a competition to reimagine the Australian dream? And why now? We felt the unsettling process catalysed by the pandemic offered a rare chance for reconsideration of the now stale, traditional Australian suburban dream. Indeed, the COVID-19 pandemic has dramatically reshaped lifestyle, dwelling and transport preferences of Australians. These shifts, amongst many others, have reignited a raft of planning issues, including regional settlement patterns, public and private open space provision, housing design, urban density, and mass transit connectivity. This refocusing is timely because the suburban Australian dream is running out of steam on many fronts and fails to acknowledge the tens of thousands of years of Indigenous dreaming. Of course, the societal, environmental, cultural challenges facing our cities are huge. However, I don't want to dwell on these because, as Rob Hopkins reminds us, this narrative of crisis can become the wall that separates us from the capacity to envision and enact a positive future. Conversely, we need to be able to imagine positive, feasible, delightful versions of the future before we can create them. As he explains, having the opportunity to test drive the future, to experience different versions of the future, can help us feel they are possible. Despite the fact as a culture in Australia, we constantly and by default ridicule visionaries, this competition actively sought them out. Perhaps as a result, many of the proposals awarded are radical, a fact we don't shy away from. As Naomi Klein puts it, there are no non-radical options left before us. In this spirit, I will now present the winners of the competition. To set the scene, the BAU competition had two categories, one for primary and secondary students and one for tertiary students. The Business as Unusual Schools competition invited high school and primary school students to imagine a future Australian city and send us a postcard from themselves in 2100, when current school students will be in their 80s or 90s, hopefully. We received 120 entrants from schools around Australia, and the winners are these 15 lucky students here and talented students here, each of whom will be awarded $100 and a certificate. And if you're feeling a little cynical about the future, I suggest you peruse a sample of the postcards on the Australian Urban Design Research Centre website for the sheer scale of optimism. Floating islands powered by waves and starlight, kangaroo towers, hypersonic trains, flying villas, and boomerang buildings. Biome preservation bubbles, cities alive with returning flora and fauna, Nike flyer shoes, floating houses, and forget walkable cities, how about swimmable cities? The second competition category invited tertiary students to imagine a future Australian city that embodied a new Australian dream for the 21st century. The city needed to be of 50,000 people or more, located in a regional area. Entrants were required to develop an overall vision for the city and a design of a 1 square kilometre precinct. From a total of 72 entries, BAU's eminent interdisciplinary jury comprising of Richard Weller, Robin Goodman, Robert Freestone, Beth George, Rebecca Moore, Perry Lethlean and Abel Faliki awarded 4 entries and 5 honourable mentions. And the winners are: each of the winning entries receives $2,500 and a certificate. And I'll take you on a very brief tour of these entries. The first winning entry by Natalie Keaton and Bridget Foley, entitled Green Rail, proposed a model for creating green precincts around rail stations throughout Australia, leveraging this existing transport infrastructure. Around each railway station will be a 20-minute neighbourhood with approximately 20,000 residents, all within this 20-minute walk of high-speed rail, which connects several towns into a linear city, an expansive network of communities, limiting our impact on the environment while connecting people to their friends, communities, and city. The second winning entry, proposed by Jeremy Lovox, was entitled Port Nexus. The proposal questions established patterns of habitation and ownership, and instead enables multi-species mobility and kinship through impermanent or nomadic dwelling. Port Nexus provides an image of an alternative dream that shifts away from the existing Australian dream, which supports processes of resource extraction, land title, and centralism. The third winning entry by Nur Roslin, entitled Transit City, envisages an Australia that will be required to step up and expand its migration policy to provide refuge for more people. Transit City, a charter city, Roslin envisages will provide a more human solution to lifeless detention and offshore processing centres. With its own governing system, the city will be able to respond more promptly to the diverse needs of new migrants and represent their voices in decision-making. The final and fourth winning entry by Gemma Robinson and Maisie Matthews, entitled What's Mine, identifies that home and land ownership in Australia is becoming increasingly unattainable and envisages an alternative subscription city. As I explained, what if we lived in a subscription-based city where a monthly contribution allows you to live in any participating part of Australia? Could there be a more flexible, accessible housing model which moves users away from ideas of profit, ownership, excess, and permanence? Okay, so thank you very much to the sponsors of the competition, again, the Planning Institute of Australia and the University of Western Australia School of Design. I'd also like to thank the funding partners of the Australian Urban Design Research Centre, the Australian Planning Commission, Department of Planning, Development WA and Department of Communities, without whom these ventures are not possible. And most of all, I would like to thank the entrants who entrusted us with their urban dreams. Thank you.